And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for tomorrow morning with some cool, chilly air coming down out of the Arctic there. A lot of IFR right down into the Brooks Range from the Arctic coast there, and a lot of IFR here over the northern eastern Bering Sea along the southwest coast into Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR eastern Aleutians to Adak, and some more IFR out to the west, and band of IFR here along the North Gulf Coast extending down across the eastern part of the Panhandle, and some more IFR on the central coast there and offshore. Not too bad over the central interior. And then for the afternoon, improving here across southern Alaska, especially out here to the southwest, VFR Cook Inlet into the Susitna Valley, and portions of the Copper River Basin, marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast from the Kenai Peninsula here across the Panhandle, and IFR now for the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope with marginal VFR down to the crest of the Brooks Range. IFR here still over the eastern Bering Sea, but a little farther off the coast. And we've got some building IFR out here to the west that makes a pretty good push to the east here by Sunday morning across Adak and Atka. IFR here over the eastern Bering Sea down to the Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR St. Lawrence Island, VFR here along the coast, southwest coast up through Norton Sound, most of the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound into the interior, and a lot of IFR again from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and some spotty IFR here for the Copper River Basin, marginal for the North Gulf Coast, mostly marginal for the southeast coast. And for the afternoon Sunday, marginal VFR for the Panhandle, and maybe some VFR breaking out along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, marginal VFR in the mountainous terrain here across southern Alaska, or the southeast interior areas, Kenai Peninsula as well, and pretty good VFR, much of interior Alaska until you get up to the Brooks Range. North of there, that zone of IFR, North Slope, eastern Arctic coast, band of IFR here over the eastern Bering Sea, and IFR for the Aleutians. And then for the passes for Anatuvik and Atigan, IFR, especially on the northern approach of both passes. Lake Clark and Merrill, mostly marginal throughout the day tomorrow. Same forecast for rainy, windy, occasional marginal VFR, occasionally marginal for both Isabel and, or actually Mentasta, probably IFR. Could go marginal later in the afternoon there. See some improvement in the latter part of the afternoon for Mentasta. Tanita, mostly marginal. Portage, IFR becoming marginal VFR during the afternoon hours toward evening. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, about 4,000 feet in the central interior and anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 feet down across the southeast coast. And much warmer air here showing up along the western Aleutians and off to the southwest. And for the Aleutians, look for some isolated moderate rime icing coming in with the first surge of moisture there across into the central Aleutians extending westward. Heavier icing expected to be Kodiak Island, up along the Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, and then back down across the Panhandle. Expect some considerable moderate icing there. And the jet stream here, low pressure across the Gulf of Alaska, actually back into Bristol Bay. And here's the cold one coming down from the Arctic there, bringing the colder temperatures and snow to the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coastal areas. Otherwise, the main jet out here, northwesterlies, about 105 knots or so, 110 knots across the eastern Aleutians there, staying well to the south of even the Gulf of Alaska. And at 9,000 feet, colder air and those northeasterly winds, 40 to 45 knots here for the western North Slope areas in toward Selawik Valley, northeast 40 knots along the southwest coast, and northwest 45 to 50 knots for the central Aleutians. Low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, probably going to give some 40-knot winds there along the coast of the Panhandle. 3,000 feet, you can see a narrow band of easterly winds here, mostly along and off the North Gulf Coast, just south of the Kenai Peninsula, just grazing the east side of Kodiak Island. Otherwise pretty light and variable over the interior. North to northwest, 40 to 45 knots there along the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and northeasterlies, 30 to 40 knots up there over the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait back into the western Brooks Range. Turbulence, look for considerable moderate turbulence in areas, especially for small aircraft, Western Brooks Range out to Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, and Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, as well as the Alaska Peninsula here to the Fox Islands. Pretty smooth, or nothing of any real significance turbulence-wise for the remainder of the state.